If sarcasm burned calories, I'd be skinny as my wife's patience for me. But here I am at 2 in the morning, standing in our granite-countered kitchen, watching Aven Bardell slip through the front door like she owns the place. Which, according to the papers she's about to slide across this very counter, she thinks she does. Business dinner ran late, she says, not bothering to look at me as she drops her designer purse on the island. The Chanel perfume hits me before her words do. That perfume is new, I say, leaning against the refrigerator. Too bad the lies aren't. Aven finally looks up, and I see that cold calculation in her green eyes that used to be reserved for quarterly reports. Now it's aimed at me like a loaded weapon. She's still beautiful at 32, still the ambitious tech manager who caught my eye at a conference 5 years ago. But something shifted in the last 6 months. Something that turned my wife into a stranger who speaks in corporate buzzwords and treats our marriage like a hostile takeover. Kellan, we need to talk. She reaches into her purse and pulls out a manila envelope. The kind lawyers use. The kind that ends things. I don't move from my spot by the fridge. At 2 in the morning, must be some conversation. I filed today. She slides the papers across the counter with the same efficiency she uses to approve purchase orders. I want you out by the end of the week. I pick up the divorce papers, scanning the legal language that basically translates to Kellan Brooks gets nothing. My investigative consulting business, the one I built after leaving teaching, apparently doesn't count for much in her calculations. Neither do the 5 years I spent supporting her career while she climbed the corporate ladder at TechFlow Solutions. Generous terms, I say, flipping through pages that award her the house, both cars, and most of our joint assets. Let me guess. Derek helped you figure out the math? Her face doesn't change, but her hand tightens around her car keys. Derek Rains, the innovation consultant, who's been billing her company for services I'm pretty sure have nothing to do with business strategy. Mid-30s, drives a Tesla, wears loafers without socks, and has the kind of confidence that comes from never being punched in the mouth. Derek is a professional contact, she says. Unlike you, some of us network with successful people. Right. Is that what we're calling it now? Aven straightens, and I see the woman who negotiated a $12 million software contract last year. Cold, calculating, absolutely certain she holds all the cards. Face it, Kellan, you're a failed teacher turned small-time investigator. You make $40,000 a year tracking down cheating spouses and insurance fraud. I make triple that managing TechFlow's client relations. This house, this lifestyle, I paid for it. She's not wrong about the salary disparity. My consulting work pays the bills, but barely. What she doesn't know is that I'm very good at what I do. Very good at finding things people want to stay hidden. Very good at connecting dots that others miss. So you want the house, the cars, and what? Spousal support too? I want you gone. Sign the papers, take your PI license and your sad little office, and disappear. Make this easy on both of us. I set the papers down and look at her. Really look at her. The woman I married wouldn't have been this cruel. The woman I married had a heart somewhere under all that ambition. And if I don't want to make it easy? Aven laughs, and it's the sound of glass breaking. Then we'll do this the hard way. But fair warning, Kellan, you can't afford a good lawyer anyway. Mine costs more per hour than you make in a week. That's when I smile, really smile, for the first time in months. Who said I was paying? Before she can ask what I mean, footsteps echo from the front hallway. Aven turns, confusion replacing confidence on her face, as my best friend walks into the kitchen carrying a leather briefcase and wearing a suit that costs more than my car. Sorry I'm late, Felix Roard says, setting his briefcase on the counter next to the divorce papers. Traffic was terrible. Aven stares at him like he's a ghost, which, in a way, he is. The ghost of every assumption she's made about my life, my connections, my ability to fight back. Felix? Her voice cracks just slightly. What are you doing here? I'm here for Kellan, he says, opening his briefcase with practiced precision. Professional consultation. I watch Aven's face as the pieces start falling into place. Felix roared. The guy she's seen crashed on our couch during football weekends. The college friend who brings beer and terrible jokes to our barbecues. The man she's dismissed as just another one of Kellan's loser buddies for the past 3 years. What she doesn't know, what I've never told her, is that Felix Roard is the founding partner of Roard, Martinez and Associates, the most aggressive family law firm in the state. The man responsible for the 3 largest divorce settlements in Texas history. The lawyer whose face graced the cover of Texas Legal Monthly just last year under the headline, The Divorce Destroyer. This is a private conversation, Aven says, but her voice has lost its edge. Not anymore, Felix replies, pulling out a manila folder of his own. Mrs. Bardell, I believe you know my reputation. The color drains from her face. She knows. Of course she knows. Anyone in the legal or business community in this city knows Felix Roard's reputation. He's the lawyer other lawyers warn their clients about. The man who turns divorce proceedings into scorched earth campaigns. You can't afford him, she whispers to me. That's the beautiful part, I say, still smiling. I don't have to. Felix looks at Aven with the same expression he uses when studying a particularly interesting chess problem. 20 years ago, your husband saved my life. Bone marrow transplant during my leukemia treatment. I've been waiting 2 decades to repay that debt. He opens his folder and slides a single sheet of paper across the counter. It's a retainer agreement with my name on it and a fee of exactly $0. Consider this my payment plan, Felix says. Aven picks up the paper with shaking hands. This isn't... You can't just... Actually, I can, and I will. Felix's voice carries the weight of 2 decades of courtroom victories. Mrs. Bardell, I suggest you contact your attorney. Tell him Felix Roard is representing your husband. Tell him to clear his calendar. She looks between us, and I see the moment she realizes her carefully constructed plan just collapsed. The corporate shark who walked into this kitchen 20 minutes ago is gone, replaced by a woman who suddenly understands she's swimming in deeper waters than she imagined. This isn't over, she says, grabbing her purse. No, Felix agrees, closing his briefcase with a soft click. It's just beginning. After she leaves, Felix and I sit in the kitchen drinking coffee like we have 100 times before. But everything's different now. The debt he's carried for 20 years, the one I never wanted him to feel, is finally being called in. You sure about this? I ask. Felix looks at me with tired eyes. Kellan, you gave me my life back when we were 22. Let me return the favor now that we're 42. Outside, Aven's car starts with an expensive purr. She's probably calling Derek or her lawyer or both, planning her next move, figuring out how to regain the upper hand. What she doesn't know is that I've been investigating her for 3 months. What she doesn't know is that Derek's consulting fees are about to become very interesting to a lot of people. What she doesn't know is that her cloud backup automatically synced every text message she thought she deleted. What she doesn't know is that the underdog she just cornered has very sharp teeth. 3 days after the kitchen ultimatum, I'm sitting in my office above Murphy's Deli, going through the files I've been building on my wife's extracurricular activities. The space isn't much. 2 rooms, a coffee maker that's older than my marriage, and a view of the parking lot behind the courthouse. But it's mine, and right now, it's command central for the most important investigation of my career. My brother-in-law, Tony, knocks and walks in without waiting for an answer. Ex-cop turned private investigator. Tony Castellano has the kind of face that makes people confess to crimes they didn't commit. He's also the only family member who still talks to me since Aven started her whisper campaign about our marital difficulties. Got those phone records you wanted, he says, dropping a manila envelope on my desk. Your wife's been busy. I open the envelope and spread out 3 months of call logs. The pattern jumps out immediately. Daily calls to Derek Rains, usually lasting 30 to 45 minutes. The timing is interesting too. Most of them happen during her lunch breaks or right after work. The kind of calls you make when you want privacy. "There's more," Tony says, settling into the chair across from my desk. "Remember that LLC you had me look into? Rains Consulting Solutions? The one Derek set up 6 months ago? That's the one. Guess who's been paying them monthly consulting fees?" I look up from the phone records. TechFlow Solutions. Bingo. $15,000 a month for strategic innovation consulting. Signed off on by the client relations manager. Tony grins. "Want to guess who that is?" Aven. "My wife has been funneling company money to her lover through a consulting contract. It's elegant, I'll give her that. Completely legal on the surface, but ethically questionable at best. And if Derek isn't actually providing legitimate services..." "This is good," I say, adding the information to my growing file. "But I need more." "Way ahead of you." Tony pulls out his phone and shows me a series of photographs. "Took these yesterday afternoon at the Marriott downtown." The photos show Aven and Derek in the hotel bar, sitting close together in a corner booth. Her hand on his arm, his fingers playing with her wedding ring. The body language tells the whole story. These aren't business associates grabbing a quick drink after work. "How long were they there?" 2 hours. Then they went upstairs to room 1247. Derek checked in that morning under his company name. I study the photos, feeling that familiar mix of anger and vindication that comes with confirming what you already know. Part of me, the part that still remembers falling in love with Aven, feels sick. But the larger part, the investigator part, feels satisfied. Evidence doesn't lie. Evidence doesn't make excuses. Evidence just is. My phone buzzes with a text from Felix. "Coffee, we need to discuss strategy." 20 minutes later, I'm sitting across from my best friend at Cornerstone Coffee, watching him review my files with the methodical precision that made him famous. Felix has changed since that night in my kitchen. The casual beer-drinking buddy has been replaced by the laser-focused attorney who's never lost a contested divorce case. "This is good work," he says, closing the folder. "The consulting payments are particularly interesting. If we can prove Derek isn't providing legitimate services, it becomes fraud, or at least a serious conflict of interest. Either way, it gives us leverage." Felix sips his coffee and studies me over the rim of his cup. "How are you holding up?" It's a fair question. 3 days ago, I thought I was looking at losing everything. Now I'm sitting with one of the state's top divorce attorneys, building a case that could turn the tables completely. The emotional whiplash is exhausting. I keep thinking about the woman I married, I admit. She wasn't capable of this level of deception. People change, especially when money and power are involved. Felix's voice carries the weight of experience. I've seen it hundreds of times. Good people convince themselves they deserve more, that the rules don't apply to them, that their spouse won't fight back. She's not wrong about that last part. I've never been much of a fighter. No, but you're an investigator. You find the truth, and sometimes the truth is the most powerful weapon you can have. Felix opens his briefcase and pulls out a legal pad covered with notes. "I've been thinking about our approach. We have 3 options. We can go aggressive from the start, file for emergency injunctions, demand immediate asset freezing, make a lot of noise. We can play it quiet, gather more evidence, build an airtight case, then strike when she's not expecting it. Or we can give her a chance to be reasonable. What do you recommend?" Normally, option 2. Quiet investigation, overwhelming evidence, decisive victory. He looks at me seriously. "But this isn't a normal case. This is personal. And Aven made a mistake when she assumed you were helpless." "What kind of mistake?" "She showed her hand too early. Those divorce papers she served you, they're insulting. Any reasonable attorney would have advised a more equitable split, especially given your contribution to her career advancement. Instead, she went for total victory. I think about that night in the kitchen, the cold certainty in Aven's voice when she told me to disappear, the casual cruelty of dismissing 5 years of marriage like a failed business venture. So, what do we do? Felix smiles, and for the first time since this started, it's not a friendly expression. We show her what a real fight looks like. That afternoon, I drive to TechFlow Solutions office complex on the north side of town. It's one of those gleaming corporate campuses that screams, "We're disrupting industries you didn't know needed disrupting." Aven's BMW is in her reserved spot in the executive parking area, right next to a silver Tesla with the license plate INOV HR. Derek's car. Of course. I park across the street and wait. At 5:30, they emerge together from the main building, walking close but not touching. Professional distance maintained for the benefit of anyone watching. They separate at their cars with a brief conversation, then drive off in different directions. I follow the Tesla. Derek lives in Skyline Towers, a luxury apartment complex that caters to young professionals with more money than sense. I watch him park and head inside, then circle around to the visitor parking area. Through the lobby windows, I can see him checking his mailbox, chatting with the concierge, playing the part of the successful consultant. My phone rings. "Aven, we need to talk," she says without preamble. "I thought we said everything the other night." "Don't be naive, Kellan. You can't win this. Felix roared or no Felix roared, the facts are still the facts. I make the money, I bought the house, I have the better attorney." "Had," I correct. "You had the better attorney." Silence on the other end. Then, "This doesn't have to get ugly." "Doesn't it? You're the one who made it ugly, Aven. I'm just responding appropriately." "What do you want?" It's the first time in months she's asked me that question. The first time she's acknowledged that I might want something other than whatever she's decided to give me. "I want the truth." "About what?" "About Derek. About the consulting fees. About how long you've been planning this." Another silence. Longer this time. When she speaks again, her voice has changed. Less corporate executive, more trapped animal. "You don't understand the pressure I'm under, the expectations. Derek helps me navigate the politics at work. It's not what you think." "Then explain it to me." "I can't. Not over the phone. Meet me tomorrow. Lunch at Bistro 41. We can work this out like adults." After she hangs up, I sit in my car looking up at Derek's apartment building. Lights are coming on in windows as people return from work, settling into their evening routines. Normal people living normal lives, unaware that their neighbor is at the center of a domestic drama that's about to explode. I think about Aven's offer to meet, to work this out like adults. 6 months ago, I would have jumped at the chance. I would have believed that conversation could solve our problems, that love could overcome whatever was driving us apart. But that was before I saw the divorce papers, before I learned about the consulting fees, before I understood that my wife had been planning my destruction while I was still trying to save our marriage. Tomorrow, I'll meet her for lunch. I'll listen to her explanations and her justifications. I'll give her one last chance to do the right thing. And when she doesn't take it, Felix and I will show her what happens when you corner someone who's very good at finding the truth. Bistro 41 sits in the heart of downtown, the kind of place where business deals get made over overpriced salads and imported wine. It's Aven's choice, naturally, neutral ground where she feels comfortable, surrounded by the corporate crowd that validates her sense of importance. I arrive 10 minutes early and choose a table near the back, away from the lunch rush but with a clear view of the entrance. Old habits from my investigative work. Always know your exits, always control your sightlines. Aven walks in at exactly noon, because punctuality is one of her few remaining virtues. She's dressed for battle in a charcoal gray suit that probably costs more than most people's rent, her auburn hair pulled back in the severe bun she wears for important meetings. She scans the restaurant until she spots me, then approaches with the measured stride of someone who's rehearsed this conversation. "Thank you for coming," she says, settling into the chair across from me. "Wouldn't miss it." The waiter appears immediately. Aven has that effect on service staff. She orders a Caesar salad and sparkling water. I ask for coffee and the burger because I'm not pretending this is a social lunch. "You look tired," she says, and there's almost genuine concern in her voice. "Divorce will do that to you." She flinches slightly. "It doesn't have to be a divorce, Kellan. We could try counseling, work through our issues." "What issues would those be? The issue where you're funneling company money to your lover? Or the issue where you've been planning to leave me for months while pretending everything was fine?" Aven glances around the restaurant, checking to see if anyone's listening. "Keep your voice down." "Why? Worried about your reputation?" "I'm worried about having a civilized conversation." The waiter brings our drinks. Aven sips her sparkling water while I study her face, looking for tells. After 5 years of marriage and 15 years of investigative work, I'm pretty good at reading people. What I see in Aven's expression is fear, carefully controlled, but definitely there. "Tell me about Derek," I say. "He's a consultant. I already explained this." $15,000 a month for strategic innovation consulting. That's a lot of money for advice. Her hand tightens around her water glass. "Derek has connections throughout the industry. His insights have been invaluable." "I'm sure they have, especially the insights he shares at the Marriott." The color drains from her face. "You had me followed." "I had Derek followed. You were just there." Aven sets down her glass and looks directly at me for the first time since she sat down. "What do you want, Kellan? I want you to stop lying to me. I want you to admit what this is really about. And I want you to explain why you thought I'd just roll over and let you destroy me." Our food arrives, but neither of us touches it. The Caesar salad sits wilting while my burger grows cold. Around us, the lunch crowd chatters about quarterly reports and market projections, oblivious to the domestic warfare happening at table 12. "You're right," Aven says quietly. "About Derek, about the consulting fees, about all of it." It's the first honest thing she's said to me in months, and it hits harder than I expected. Part of me wanted to be wrong. Part of me wanted there to be some innocent explanation that would make sense of everything. "How long?" 6 months, maybe 7. "And the divorce papers?" "Derek's idea. He said clean breaks were better for everyone involved." "Derek's idea, of course." I lean back in my chair. "Let me guess. He also suggested the consulting arrangement." Aven nods, and I see tears forming in her eyes. Real ones, not the corporate crocodile tears she uses in negotiations. It started as legitimate consulting. Derek really does have industry connections. But then we got closer and the lines blurred, and before you knew it, you were embezzling company funds to pay your lover. "It's not embezzlement. Derek provides services." "What services? Besides the obvious ones?" She stands abruptly, her chair scraping against the floor. "I don't have to listen to this." "Yes, you do, because here's what's going to happen next." I pull out my phone and show her one of Tony's photographs, her and Derek in the hotel bar, his hand on her thigh. "Felix is filing an amended response to your divorce petition. We're asking for the house, the cars, spousal support, and damages for adultery." "You can't prove adultery from a photograph." "Maybe not, but I can prove fraud. Derek's LLC, the consulting payments, the fact that his strategic innovations amount to generic industry reports he downloads from the internet." I slide my phone back into my pocket. "TechFlow's board might be very interested in how their client relations manager has been spending company money." Aven sits back down heavily. "You're bluffing." "Am I? You know what I do for a living, Aven. You know how good I am at finding things people want to hide. Did you really think I wouldn't investigate my own wife's affair?" "What do you want?" she asks again, but this time her voice is barely above a whisper. I want you to withdraw the divorce petition. I want you to end things with Derek. And I want you to come clean to TechFlow about the consulting arrangement. I can't do that. It would destroy my career. Your choice. Do it voluntarily, or Felix and I will do it for you. Aven stares at her untouched salad, and I watch her corporate mask finally slip completely. Underneath is the woman I married, scared, confused, and in way over her head. How did we get here? She asks. You tell me. I'm not the one who decided our marriage was disposable. I felt trapped. The pressure at work, the expectations, the constant need to prove myself in a male-dominated industry. Derek made me feel powerful, important. And I made you feel what? Weak? She looks up at me with red-rimmed eyes. You made me feel ordinary. It's like being punched in the chest. 5 years of marriage, of supporting her career, of celebrating her victories and comforting her defeats, reduced to making her feel ordinary. I see. Kellan, I didn't mean... Yes, you did. And you know what? Maybe you're right. Maybe I am ordinary. Maybe I don't drive a Tesla or wear $1,000 suits or promise to disrupt entire industries. I stand and throw $20 on the table. But I'm also not a fraud, and I don't destroy people I claim to love. I'm halfway to the door when she calls my name. Kellan, wait. I turn back. She's standing now, her perfect corporate composure completely shattered. What happens now? Now you decide what kind of person you want to be. The kind who takes responsibility for her choices, or the kind who lets other people clean up her mess. And if I choose wrong? I think about Felix waiting back at his office, about the files full of evidence, about the nuclear option we've been preparing. Then you'll find out why Felix Roard has never lost a case. Outside the restaurant, I sit in my car for 10 minutes, trying to process what just happened. Aven admitted everything: the affair, the consulting fraud, the calculated cruelty of her divorce petition. She also revealed the real reason behind it all. I made her feel ordinary. My phone buzzes with a text from Felix. How did it go? I type back, she chose wrong. His response comes immediately. Then we proceed as planned. Time to show Mrs. Bardell what extraordinary looks like. I start my car and head back to the office, where Tony is waiting with more evidence and Felix is preparing for war. Aven had her chance to end this quietly, to salvage what was left of her dignity and our marriage. Instead, she chose Derek. She chose the fraud. She chose to see me as ordinary. Now she's about to learn that ordinary men with extraordinary friends can be very dangerous indeed. 2 weeks later, I'm sitting in courtroom 3B of the Harris County Family Court, watching Aven's attorney shuffle through papers with the frantic energy of a man who knows he's about to lose. Richard Blackwood is everything you'd expect from a lawyer who charges $800 an hour. Silver-haired, perfectly tailored, and absolutely convinced of his own superiority. He's also about to have the worst day of his professional career. Aven sits beside him in a navy blue dress that screams, responsible corporate executive, her hair styled to suggest both competence and vulnerability. She's playing the part perfectly. The successful businesswoman reluctantly seeking divorce from her underachieving husband. If I didn't know better, I might even feel sorry for her. Derek isn't here, of course. He's probably at his apartment, waiting for Aven to text him the good news about her legal victory. What he doesn't know is that Felix has already served him with a subpoena to testify about his consulting services. That particular conversation should be interesting. Judge Patricia Hendricks takes the bench at exactly 9 a.m. She's in her 50s, with the no-nonsense demeanor of someone who's seen every possible variation of human stupidity in her courtroom. I've done my research. Judge Hendricks has a particular dislike for attorneys who waste her time and an even stronger dislike for fraud. Good morning, she says, settling into her chair. This is the matter of Bardell versus Brooks. Mr. Blackwood, I understand you're representing the petitioner. Blackwood rises with practiced confidence. Yes, Your Honor. This is a straightforward dissolution of marriage. My client, Ms. Bardell, is seeking an equitable division of assets based on her substantially higher income and contribution to the marital estate. I see. And Mr. Brooks, you're represented by… That's when the courtroom door opens and Felix walks in. He's carrying a single banker's box, the kind lawyers use for discovery documents. His suit is charcoal gray, perfectly pressed, and probably costs more than my car. But it's not the clothes that change the atmosphere in the room. It's the man wearing them. Felix Roard doesn't just enter a courtroom. He claims it. Blackwood's face goes white. Judge Hendricks raises an eyebrow. Even the court reporter looks up from her machine. Felix Roard for the respondent, Your Honor, Felix says, setting his box on our table with deliberate precision. Blackwood immediately requests a sidebar. Judge Hendricks waves both attorneys to the bench, and I watch Blackwood's confident posture crumble as Felix whispers something in his ear. Whatever he's saying, it's having the desired effect. Blackwood keeps shaking his head, glancing back at Aven, then returning to his hushed conversation with Felix. The sidebar lasts 15 minutes. When they return to their tables, Blackwood looks like a man who's just been diagnosed with a terminal illness. Your Honor, he says, his voice noticeably less confident than before, I need to request a recess to confer with my client about some new developments. What kind of developments? Judge Hendricks asks. Felix stands. Your Honor, the respondent has discovered evidence of financial irregularities involving the petitioner and a third party. We are prepared to present documentation of fraudulent consulting payments, adultery, and potential embezzlement of corporate funds. The words hit the courtroom like grenades. Aven's perfect composure finally cracks, her face cycling through shock, fear, and desperate calculation. Mr. Blackwood? Judge Hendricks prompts. Your Honor, these are serious allegations that require careful review. I respectfully request a 2-hour recess. Granted. We'll reconvene at noon. As the judge leaves the bench, Blackwood practically drags Aven toward the hallway. I can hear him hissing at her as they disappear through the doors. Why didn't you tell me about the consulting payments? Felix calmly packs his papers back into the banker's box. Well, that was easier than I expected. Think they'll settle? Oh, they'll settle. The question is whether Blackwood can convince his client to accept reality before she destroys herself completely. We adjourn to Felix's office, a corner suite in the downtown legal district that screams success from every polished surface. The walls are lined with law books and framed articles about his most famous cases. Behind his desk hangs a photograph of him shaking hands with the governor after winning a landmark family law case. So what exactly did you tell Blackwood? I ask. Felix opens his banker's box and spreads the contents across his conference table. Financial records, photographs, text message transcripts, corporate documents, months of investigation laid out like a military campaign. I told him about Derek's LLC and the consulting payments. I told him about the hotel meetings and the deleted text messages. And I told him that if this case goes to trial, I'll subpoena Derek, Aven's boss, and half the TechFlow board of directors. And that was enough to scare him? That was just the appetizer. Felix picks up a thick folder labeled Rains Consulting Solutions. The main course is Derek's tax returns. Turns out our innovation consultant hasn't been reporting all his income. The IRS might be very interested in his business practices. I stare at the documents spread across the table. 3 months ago, I was a failed husband facing financial ruin. Now I'm looking at enough evidence to destroy 2 careers and possibly send someone to prison. Felix, this is what happens when someone underestimates you, he says. Aven thought you were helpless. Derek thought he was untouchable. Blackwood thought he could intimidate me with his reputation and his hourly rate. And now? Now they're in the hallway trying to figure out how to surrender without losing everything. At 11:45, my phone rings. It's Blackwood. Mr. Brooks, I think we can reach an amicable settlement. I'm listening. My client is prepared to offer a 50-50 split of all marital assets plus spousal support for 2 years. I look at Felix, who shakes his head and holds up 3 fingers. Counteroffer, I say. 70-30 split in my favor, 3 years spousal support, and she terminates the consulting arrangement with Derek immediately. Silence on the other end. Then, that's quite generous to your client, Mr. Brooks. Not as generous as what we'll ask for at trial. I need to discuss this with my client. You have 10 minutes before we're back in court. After I hang up, Felix grins. Think she'll take it? She'd be stupid not to. Never underestimate people's capacity for stupidity, especially when their pride is involved. At exactly noon, we return to the courtroom. Aven and Blackwood are already seated, and I can see from her red-rimmed eyes that the morning's revelations have finally broken through her corporate armor. Judge Hendricks takes the bench. Gentlemen, have you reached an agreement? Blackwood stands slowly. Your Honor, after careful consideration of all factors involved, my client wishes to accept the respondent's settlement offer. And what are the terms of this settlement? Felix rises. The petitioner will receive 30% of marital assets. The respondent will receive 70% plus the marital residence. The petitioner will pay spousal support of $2,000 monthly for 3 years. All consulting arrangements with third parties will be terminated immediately. Judge Hendricks looks surprised. Mrs. Bardell, do you understand these terms? Aven stands on shaking legs. Yes, Your Honor. And you agree to them voluntarily? Yes, Your Honor. Very well. I'll sign the decree this afternoon. Court is adjourned. As the judge leaves, I watch Aven gather her things with the mechanical movements of someone in shock. 3 hours ago, she walked into this courtroom expecting total victory. Now she's leaving with barely enough to start over. Blackwood approaches Felix with the expression of a man who's just been schooled by a master. Impressive work, counselor. Just doing my job, Felix replies. As Aven reaches the courtroom door, she turns back to look at me one last time. There's no anger in her expression now, no corporate calculation, just the hollow recognition of someone who finally understands the cost of their choices. Then she's gone, and I'm left standing in the empty courtroom with my best friend, surrounded by the wreckage of my marriage and the foundation of my new life. So what now? I ask. Felix closes his banker's box with a satisfied click. Now you go home, to your house, and you start over. Outside the courthouse, Felix refuses my offer of dinner, refuses celebration, refuses everything except a simple handshake. We're even now, he says, handing me the keys to my new life. But we both know that's not true. Some debts can never be repaid, only honored. And as I watch Felix walk away, I understand that the man who saved my marriage is the same man who saved my life 20 years ago. Not with bone marrow this time, but with something equally precious. The truth. And the skill to wield it like a weapon. 3 months after the courthouse victory, I'm sitting in what used to be our kitchen, now definitively mine, reading the morning paper over coffee that tastes better than it has in years. The house feels different without Aven's corporate energy filling every corner, quieter but not empty. Peaceful, maybe, for the first time since I can remember. My phone buzzes with a text from Tony. You need to see this. The attached link takes me to a local business journal article titled TechFlow Solutions Restructures Client Relations Department. The piece is corporate speak for "We fired someone important," and buried in the 3rd paragraph is Aven's name. Former client relations manager, the article says. Pursuing new opportunities. I set down my phone and look around the kitchen where this all started. The granite counters are the same, the stainless steel appliances unchanged, but everything feels different now. This isn't the kitchen where my marriage ended anymore. It's just my kitchen, in my house, where I drink my coffee and read about my ex-wife's continued downward spiral. The doorbell rings, interrupting my morning routine. Through the front window, I can see Felix standing on my porch, looking uncharacteristically casual in jeans and a polo shirt. "Thought you might want to hear the latest news," he says when I open the door. "About Aven losing her job? Already saw it. Not about Aven, about Derek." I pour Felix coffee and we sit at the kitchen island where this whole thing began. He pulls out his phone and shows me a news article from yesterday's paper. "Derek Raines, 34, was arrested yesterday on charges of tax evasion and fraud," Felix reads. The arrest stems from an investigation into his consulting business, which allegedly received payments for services never rendered. I study the accompanying mugshot. Derek looks exactly like what he is, a small-time con man who got too greedy and too careless. The confident innovator who seduced my wife has been replaced by a scared man in an orange jumpsuit. How much trouble is he in? Serious trouble. The IRS doesn't mess around with tax evasion, and the fraud charges carry real prison time. He's looking at 3 to 5 years minimum. And Aven? She's cooperating with investigators. Apparently, she's claiming she was deceived about the nature of Derek's services. Felix grins. Amazing how quickly love turns to self-preservation. I think about the woman who sat across from me in Bistro 41, tears in her eyes as she confessed to the affair. The woman who said Derek made her feel powerful and important. Now she's throwing him under the bus to save herself from criminal charges. Will she face charges too? Doubtful. Her cooperation, combined with the fact that she wasn't directly involved in the tax evasion, probably keeps her out of prison. But her career is over. No tech company will hire someone with her baggage. We sit in comfortable silence, drinking coffee and contemplating the complete destruction of the people who tried to destroy me. 6 months ago, Aven and Derek thought they were untouchable. They had money, connections, and a foolproof plan to eliminate the ordinary husband who stood in their way. Now, Derek's in jail, Aven's unemployed and unemployable, and I'm sitting in my house, financially secure for the first time in years, with my reputation intact and my future wide open. "Any regrets?" Felix asks. I consider the question seriously. Do I regret the investigation that exposed their fraud? Do I regret the courtroom ambush that destroyed Aven's carefully constructed plans? Do I regret the chain of events that led to Derek's arrest and Aven's professional suicide? No, I say finally. They made their choices. I just made sure there were consequences. That's very philosophical of you. I've had time to think about it. Aven was right about one thing. I am ordinary. I don't drive luxury cars or wear designer suits or promise to revolutionize entire industries. But ordinary doesn't mean helpless, and it doesn't mean I'll let people walk all over me. Felix nods approvingly. The best revenge is living well. Is that what this was? Revenge? What would you call it? I think about the question as I refill our coffee cups. Was it revenge? Justice? Self-defense? Maybe it was all three, or maybe the distinction doesn't matter. What matters is that when I was cornered, when I was dismissed as irrelevant and powerless, I fought back with the tools I had available. I'd call it a learning experience, I say finally, for everyone involved. My phone rings. The caller ID shows a number I don't recognize, but when I answer, the voice is familiar. "Kellan? It's Aven." Felix raises an eyebrow. I put the call on speaker. "What can I do for you, Aven?" "I saw the news about Derek. I wanted you to know that I had nothing to do with his tax problems." "I know. Felix told me you're cooperating with the investigation." Silence on the other end. Then, "I also wanted to apologize for everything. The affair, the divorce papers, the things I said about you being ordinary." Apology accepted. Just like that? Just like that. We're divorced, Aven. We both got what we wanted. Did we? Because I'm unemployed, broke, and facing possible criminal charges. And you got everything. There's no bitterness in her voice, just exhausted recognition of reality. The corporate shark who tried to devour me has been reduced to this, a woman calling her ex-husband to apologize for underestimating him. I got what I was entitled to, I correct. What I would have gotten from the beginning if you'd been honest about wanting a divorce. You're right, I made this harder than it needed to be. Yes, you did. Another silence. Then, for what it's worth, I never meant for Derek to commit fraud. I thought he was legitimate. I know. You were a victim too, in your own way. Thank you for saying that. After she hangs up, Felix and I sit quietly in my kitchen, processing the conversation. There was something almost cathartic about it. The final acknowledgement from Aven that she had misjudged both me and Derek. Think she's learned her lesson? Felix asks. I think she's learned that actions have consequences. Whether that translates to better judgment in the future, I shrug. Not my problem anymore. Felix finishes his coffee and checks his watch. I should get going. Margaret's making lunch, and she gets cranky when I'm late. At the front door, he pauses and looks back at me. 20 years ago when you donated that bone marrow, I promised myself I'd find a way to repay you. You did repay me, in the most spectacular way possible. Maybe. But I think what really happened is that you repaid yourself. You just needed someone to level the playing field. After Felix leaves, I walk through my house, really walk through it, seeing it clearly for the first time in months. It's not a mansion, and it's not a palace. It's just a 3-bedroom suburban home with a 2-car garage and a backyard that needs mowing. But it's mine. Completely, legally, undisputedly mine. In my home office, I sit down at the desk where I built the case that destroyed my wife's plans and her lover's freedom. The files are still there, neatly organized in folders that tell the story of investigation, discovery, and justice served. I could keep them as trophies, reminders of the day I stopped being ordinary and became extraordinary, or I could file them away and move on with my life. I choose the second option, because the truth is, I was never ordinary. I was just married to someone who couldn't see my worth, and now that she's gone, I can finally see it myself. The phone rings again. This time it's a potential client, a woman whose husband has been acting suspiciously. She's heard about my reputation, she says. She's heard I'm very good at finding the truth. I am, I tell her. When do you want to start? As I schedule the appointment, I realize that Aven was wrong about more than just my ordinariness. She was wrong about my future, too. My investigative business isn't failing. It's about to become very successful, built on the foundation of the most important case I've ever solved. The case that taught me the difference between being ordinary and being underestimated. And the case that proved that sometimes the most dangerous person in the room is the one nobody sees coming.